Chapter 61, Yi Guhan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 061 Yi Guhan. Regular chapter. Yi Guhan, he is a solitary top-rate expert who traveled alone, and a Sky Xian expert. Everyone knew that he had never become close to anyone. He possesses a solitary nature and is ruthless. Once his sword is drawn, those he fought against would usually end up dead. However, they do not know something. This solitary swordsman was once a handsome and passionate young master. There is an even bigger secret that no one knew of. Yi Guhan and the current empress, Murong Xiuxiu, were childhood sweethearts. However, for some unknown reason, Yi Guhan's family declined overnight, his family name removed from the capital henceforth, and Yi Guhan became a penniless nobody. Back then, the Murong family was a sky-encompassing powerhouse. Naturally, they would not allow their family's daughter to be married to a penniless nobody with only a cultivation of silver-level Xian Qi. The Murong family flagrantly obstructed them and finally caused the two lovers to part ways. Dejected, Yi Guhan left while Murong Xiuxiu was left in distraught. Murong Xiuxiu attempted to commit suicide several times but was saved from the brink of death. Eventually, there came news of Yi Guhan's death, causing Murong Xiuxiu to fall into an abyss of despair. Under the constant persuasion of her parents, she finally decided to accept her family's arrangements to enter the palace and marry the emperor. A few years later, she became the empress of the kingdom. Yi Guhan left for 10 years, his pursuit of swordsmanship was successful and his Xian Qi cultivation had advanced to the Sky Xian rank. Feeling that he was finally qualified to marry Murong Xiuxiu, he rushed back in excitement. Unfortunately, his lover from back then had become an empress, and Princess Ling Meng at the time was already 7 years old. Standing opposite one another, tears flowed down from both of them, an unspeakable feeling of pain ripping through both of them. Entering the ocean. Like palace gates, since the day Yi entered the way. Heaven's will is unpredictable, yesterday is not today. Heaven toys with the will of men, such is the decree of time. Yi Guhan became disheartened, his hair turned white overnight and his character was greatly altered, becoming heartless and extremely ruthless. However, he remains affectionate and loving towards his former lover's daughter, Princess Ling Meng. Since then, he vowed not to see Murong Xiuxiu again. But he would frequently visit Princess Ling Meng to play with her. His frozen heart would only melt when he is with Princess Ling Meng. Yi Guhan had become Princess Ling Meng's bodyguard. It did not matter whom, even if the current emperor wanted to chastise Princess Ling Meng, Yi Guhan would still wantonly unsheath his sword. Princess Ling Meng is the one thing sustaining his soul and this cold-blooded swordsman's most sensitive spot. This matter is a royal secret known only to a select few. Thus, the one behind these assassins too had no clue. If they did, they would not have sent merely 2 gold-leveled Xian expert for this assassination. In fact, there may not even be any assassination attempt. If they really wanted to kill her, then they would need at least 2 experts at the Sky Xian rank or higher in order to succeed. Yi Guhan had already determined that the mysterious expert would not come forth, but he was unwilling to allow these assassins to leave. Thus, he had revealed himself. In Yi Guhan's eyes, anyone who wished to bring harm upon Princess Ling Meng must be killed. No amnesty would be given. Slowly turning his body, he unsheathed his sword. The long sword quivered, like a serpent, an undulating blue color rose from the sword. With a grim face, Yi Guhan said, "Go die." The 9 assassins remained silent. We had previously asked in earnest if Senior had any instructions for us. The reason we asked that was to probe your intentions, and yet you remained silent. Now that we wanted to retreat, you decide to come forth and stop us. Aren't you just messing around with us? Naturally, they were unaware of how wrong they were. Those two were simply 2 different persons. Yi Guhan. If you want to kill people, you need to use swords, mouth alone will not cut it. The 2 assassin leaders became enraged as they recalled what happened. Even if your strength is far stronger than us, do you really need to toy with us? They were aware that they have no luck in winning, but their courage were ignited and they taunted him verbally. Yi Guhan remained motionless, his appearance as cold as ice, his gaze as intimidating as an incoming arrow. His straight body loosened, the light on the sword grew colder and he suddenly made his move with ruthlessness. The pale blue light exploded like fireworks and enveloped the area, signifying Yi Guhan's agreement with the assassin leader's words to use sword to kill them. It was pointless to waste his strength on words. After all, talking nonsense with a bunch of people who were about to die was probably a stupid idea. The sword shone brilliantly, bringing with it a pale blue radiance. When the sword struck out, it created an illusory dreamlike feeling. However, within this wonderful radiance was a rich flavor of heartbreaking sadness. The awe-inspiring sword radiance exuded the same atmosphere as Yi Guhan, bleakness and solitude. Yi Guhan turned his body and struck out with his sword. A light line suddenly appeared on the throat of the silver Xian assassin closest to him. A mist of blood gushed out, blending with the pale blue radiance that covered the sky. The blue and red color suffused with one another, creating a beautiful yet heartbreaking imagery within this scene of carnage. The sword breaks the heart, the horizon remains elusive. Loneliness. The corpse of the assassin slowly fell down. Yi Guhan maintained his mournful expression, his figure appeared before two other assassins. These two assassins that had seemed so impressive just moments ago now appeared to be no more than a pair of defenseless chicken and dog in his eyes. Just as how the silver level expert could look upon those at the 9th level and below as ants, the same applied to a Sky Xian expert when facing silver Xian experts. These two men were but little babies in face of a Sky Xian expert. Two more jets of blood sprayed out, Yi Guhan's face retained its grimness. Amidst the blood-filled skies, he brought a dream-like pale blue light with him as he moved about, just like a ghost. For a group of gold and silver level experts to go against a Sky Xian expert was no different from smashing a rock with eggs. There were no hope for them to emerge victorious at all. Moreover, their opponent was Yi Guhan, who is renowned for being a murderous cold-blooded maniac. Move quickly. Scatter and run. The assassin leader shouted out, his body was the first to rise to the skies, akin to an arrow flying back the way it came from. The remaining 5 assassins scattered out just like an exploding grenade, every single one of them fleeing for their lives. There was no need to think of the outcome. The only question here was, among these 9 assassins, who would be able to successfully escape? Yi Guhan let out a lengthy howl, his voice containing a dense feeling of loneliness and melancholy. His murderous aura reverberated with the endless feeling of loneliness as his pale blue sword rose into the air, just like a huge sapphire flying through the skies at a rapid speed. Each time the pale blue light flared out, an assassin's wretched cries could be heard as he fell to the ground. Just a moment after the order was given, 4 of the assassins that were trying to escape had already been killed, though their bodies have yet to descend onto the ground. As for Yi Guhan, he was engaged with one of the gold-level assassin leader. The 2 assassin leaders possessed the highest level of strength amongst the assassins. One of them fled to the north while the other fled to the south. Even with Yi Guhan's ability alone, after killing off the other 4 silver Xian assassins, he could only stop one of the leaders. As for the other one, not even he could do anything about it. Jun Xie, who was lying on the ground, had his eyes slightly opened as he enjoyed the show. Witnessing Yi Guhan's superhuman might, he could not help but feel fascinated. In an open battle, not even the original Jun Xie in his past life could hope to defeat Yi Guhan. This caused Jun Xie to have a higher evaluation towards the Xian Qi cultivation of this world. Naturally, this was only if they were to fight openly. However, if this was an assassination mission, Jun Xie was confident that he has at least n number of ways to murder Yi Guhan. After all, an open battle to the death is not Jun Xie's forte. A pale blue color, he is probably only a Sky Xian beginner, and yet he possessed such a kind of power. How would a pinnacle sky Xian compare? How would a supreme divine Xian compare? A strong feeling of delight at seeing such strong people rose within Jun Xie's heart. Fighting against the strong was the only way for one to enhance one's strength. Unfortunately, the present Jun Xie simply does not have the strength to challenge the strong. Otherwise, he would probably have jumped to his feet and challenged Yi Guhan to a fight. Strength. Jun Xie's heart burned as it churned with endless desire. As it so happened, he suddenly realized that the fleeing assassin leader was heading in his direction. The killing intent within Jun Xie's heart burst out. Son of a bitch. After bringing a bunch of people and causing this senior to end like this, you want to leave. You think you could just waltz out of here? His wrists quivered and his flying dagger slid down onto his hands. Jun Xie's face, which was hidden beneath his body, showed a ferocious smile. Time to die, kiddo. Chapter 62, Professional and Non-Professional. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 062, Professional and Non-Professional. Sponsored chapter. Sponsored by City Caramania from Indonesia. Great thanks to the sponsor for the support. The assassin leader saw that Yi Guhan was temporarily unable to catch up to him and let out a sigh of relief. As he was running away as quick as he could, he looked around and noticed that the debauchee, Jun Moxie, had at some unknown time shifted his position to instead lie on the ground with his face facing the sky. Jun Moxie's eyes seemed to be slightly opened as well. He could not help but felt surprised. Could it be that this brat is still alive? Turning his head, he saw that Yi Guhan had already pressured his partner to the road of death. Judging by what he could see, Yi Guhan was trying to catch his partner alive, and was unable to spare any attention towards him. Considering all this, he felt himself getting somewhat more courageous. We failed to kill Princess Ling Meng. But if Jun Moxie were to die, the capital would fall into chaos as well, right? The assassin leader suddenly slowed down as he moved in to deliver another sword strike into the body of this debauchee. Just as he was about to act, he suddenly saw the debauchee brat before him opening his eyes, spit out with his tongue, made a sly face and cursed in a whisper. I will screw your mother. The volume of his voice was very low. Amidst the incoming rumbling sound of hooves, the other people who were situated several zhangs, 3.04 m, away were simply unable to hear anything. Not to mention, none of them were currently paying any attention to this place as they were closely watching Yi Guhan's battle. Thus, only the assassin leader who had fled and was close to Jun Xie could hear his words clearly. Instantly, he became enraged, his eyes bulging out. Just because this senior was not able to deal with a Sky Xian expert, did you think I cannot kill a prodigal debauchee like you? Someone like you actually dare to curse at me. He charged down, his sword stabbing viciously as his heart cursed inwardly. This senior will take you down. It was then that a jade blue color flashed outward, as though the azure ocean had appeared before his very eyes. As though in a dream, a deep blue flying dagger mysteriously appeared before the assassin leader. Its aim was the assassin's throat. Sky Xian. The assassin leader became shocked, his hands and feet became frozen all of a sudden. Under the extreme shock, in addition to his earlier action of rushing downwards, he lost his composure and fell. However, before his body reached the ground, the deep blue flying dagger had already struck into his throat, penetrating inside by at least 3 inches. Even at his moment of death, the assassin leader remained confused. Yi Guhan was clearly 30 zhangs, 91.2 m, away from him, so why did the flying dagger appear here? What was going on? This question caused the gold-level assassin leader to remain confused, his eyes bulging widely in death, just like a scholar in seek of knowledge. The injuries Jun Xie suffered earlier were not light, causing his movements to be less nimble. Even though the sword wound had been wrapped up, there were still the 2 kicks from the silver-level assassin. Now, Jun Xie watched as the gold-level assassin fall to his death with a puzzled expression on his face. However, what was alarming was that even in death, his hands remained tightly gripping onto his sword. "Screw your granny. You unrepentant bastard." Jun Xie cursed inwardly. Going all out, he forced his body to move, barely budging away from the lethal strike. Pang! The assassin leader's corpse fell right on top of Jun Xie's little body. With a "chi" sound, the sword in his hand slid into Jun Xie's thigh in the area with the most flesh. If this sword had gone slightly to the left, Jun Xie would have to gloriously become an employee within the palace. SSS. SS Sanofa. Jun Xie had already been knocked down and was unable to rise up at all. Then, the sword slid into his thigh, causing him to hiss in pain. In the end, young Master Jun cried out in his heart. Who could have guessed that even a dead man could use a sword to harm others? This world is simply too freaking fantastic. The sword pierced straight through Jun Xie's thigh and into the ground beneath him. Any movement would aggravate the wound. In a worst-case scenario, it might even bring harm to his tendons. Under these circumstances, Jun Xie was simply unable to move. The same was true for the assassin leader's corpse pressing down on him. The both of them were like a human pyramid. The assassin leader's hands gripped the sword tightly, and the sword had pierced through Jun Xie's thigh. This image was unspeakably peculiar. Son of a bitch. Jun Xie was on the verge of tears. Since I came to this world, this would already be the second time that I was pressed down on by a man. First time around, even though the fatty was nauseating, he was still a living person. This time, I am actually being pressed down upon by a dead man, and I cannot even move. A living person and a dead person, both their faces were directly opposite one another, their eyes staring at each other. It was then that Jun Xie realized that this bastard had died with his eyes open. Feeling curious, Jun Xie observed carefully. The more he observed, the more he felt that this person's eyes did not seem to express resentment or malice, but rather doubt and confusion. Son of a bitch. Are you telling me that you cannot find your way to the Yellow Spring Star? Do not look at me, I do not know. Jun Xie viciously cursed him. When pressed down upon by a dead person whose eyes remained bulging out in a stare, most people would be trembling regardless of how courageous they may be. However, Jun Xie was a freak who could even start a conversation with the dead. In one word. Powerful. With a "pa," Yi Guhan disarmed the other assassin leader, his blue sword flashed out and was upon the man's throat. Who sent you? Speak up. Yi Guhan was enraged. If he did not ferret out the person behind this assassination attempt, who knew if this would happen again? He could protect Princess Ling Meng once or twice, but he may not be able to protect her forever. The next time this happened, what could he do if a Sky Xian expert was sent to hold him down? The assassin leader coldly stared at Yi Guhan, the color of despair evident within his eyes. Suddenly, he laughed out. Yi Guhan, did you think I would talk? Ha ha ha. What a joke. I did not expect that the world-renowned solitary star of the horizon, Yi Guhan, a dignified Sky Xian expert would actually turn out to be so naive. As he talked, black-colored blood suddenly flowed down from his mouth and he stopped breathing. His eyes was fixed upon Yi Guhan, a look of ridicule remained in his eyes. The moment he was captured, he had bitten down on the poison pill within his mouth. Sealing the throat and purging the blood, what a vicious poison. Yi Guhan sighed, his face revealing a look of admiration and murmured. You can be counted as a real man. I will not make things difficult for your body. Presently, all the assassins have been killed off and the area had turned silent. Even though the words uttered by Yi Guhan was low in tone, it could clearly be heard by Jun Xie. At that moment, Jun Xie suddenly had the urge to laugh loudly. What nonsense! Under these circumstances, you actually call him a real man. If that were the case, then the value of real man would no longer be of any worth. If he does not commit suicide, would you let him live? Even if you let him live because he is a real man, would the chief assassin let him live? Will the mastermind of this incident allow him to live? I have seen stupid before, but I have never seen someone so stupid. And you are a Sky Xian expert to boot. Idiotic Sky Xian expert. Jun Xie's heart welled with a great amount of contempt. Since you have decided to take him alive, the first thing you need to do when going against these kinds of people is to knock out his teeth while he still has the ability to move. This is the absolute basic. As for the blocking of acupuncture points, breaking the inner chi and all those. Hey! Do I really need to elaborate for you? Ba. Simply too unprofessional. The professional assassin within Jun Xie was greatly upset. Amid the field of blood, Princess Ling Meng frowned, seemingly unable to stand the thick scent of blood. She walked forward. Uncle Yi, when did you learn this wonderful flying dagger technique? Once we go back, you must teach me, please. Once the flying dagger was mentioned, Yi Guhan suddenly recovered himself. He immediately cupped both his hands ceremoniously as he faced the sky and spoke in a clear voice. Thank you, Senior, for extending your aid today. This Yi feels highly grateful. Princess Ling Meng's experience is shallow. If she somehow offended Senior, I hope Senior would be benevolent and not pay it any mind. If Senior have any request of me, please say the word. This junior would certainly endeavor with all my might to accomplish it in order to repay Senior's favor. In his heart, Princess Ling Meng was like his own daughter, and had become the one reason for him to live. For the mysterious expert to save Princess Ling Meng was equivalent to saving him. Thus, he did not mention whom it was that had been saved. Regardless of whom, he still felt grateful. TL. Yellow Springs equals Underworld. Chapter 63, Heartache. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In celebration on finally getting Otherworldly Evil Monarch on manga updates, here's another 2 bonus chapters. Yeah. I kinda failed at the first 2 times. 3. Also, upvotes on manga updates would be most appreciated. Manga updates link Chapter 063 Heartache. With Princess Ling Meng's level of cultivation, it was difficult for her to distinguish between a Sky Xian rank and the one above it. Her words earlier may have offended the mysterious expert. Thankfully, the mysterious expert was open-minded and chose not to pursue the matter. This was a good thing because once such a powerful figure becomes enraged, the consequences would be most disastrous. Yi Guhan, who understood the severity of the situation, had naturally come forth to remedy the situation for Princess Ling Meng's sake. Naturally, considering Yi Guhan's temper, he would never have spoken out such words if not for the sake of Princess Ling Meng. He would not do so no matter how grateful he personally felt. Everything remained silent, seemingly indicating that the mysterious, pinnacle supreme divine Xian expert had left. Yi Guhan gave out a sigh. This was something that he had expected. Considering the person's identity as a master from outside the kingdom, would he lower himself to stand before a mere princess? Uncle Yi. This is. What are you talking about? Princess Ling Meng stared at him curiously with wide-open eyes. Menger, those words of yours were too careless. Those words are a great offense to the one who saved you. The senior who issued out the dagger to save you is someone else. In addition, this senior's level of cultivation far surpasses mine. No, it would be more accurate to say I am unable to even compare with someone like him. Yi Guhan told her in an imposing manner. That dagger is the pinnacle of blessings. It is not something that I could send out. Ah! Princess Ling Meng cried out in surprise, her delicate hands covering her mouth. Something like that actually happened. Since Uncle is already a Sky Xian expert, then that would mean the senior is an even higher form of existence. That is the absolute truth. Yi Guhan nodded seriously. Princess Ling Meng gathered herself, turned to face the skies and gave a deep salute of respect. Princess Ling Meng here thanks Senior for rescuing me. My nonsensical words earlier was a blasphemy against Senior, and yet Senior was generous enough to forgive me. I wonder if Senior would be willing to come forth, so that Ling Meng could apologize and thank you in person. The space remained still, not a sound could be heard. For someone who was a Sky Xian expert or higher, why would they care for the thankful gesture of a mere princess? And if this was a pinnacle supreme divine Xian expert, he may not be willing to appear even if the other person was the Emperor of Tianxiang himself. Princess Ling Meng were not aware of all these, however in order to express her gratitude, she must profess her thanks regardless of whether the person was still around or not. Since her uncle Yi had told her that it was the truth, then it must surely be the truth. A pity, we have no chance to meet this person. Yi Guhan sighed, his face returning to its cold form, and he stood wistfully at the side. Little Menger, Uncle Yi will have to leave now. It would be better for you to return to the palace. The imperial army is already on their way. In the distance, the thundering sound of hooves inched closer. Princess Ling Meng looked at Yi Guhan with an expression of unwillingness and asked. Uncle Yi, when will you return to visit Menger? Silly Menger, Uncle Yi would always be by your side. Yi Guhan sighed inwardly before softly replying. I will definitely come to visit Menger. Earlier, one of the assassins managed to escape. That could end up causing some problems in the future. That is why Menger will have to be very careful in the next few days. Princess Ling Meng whispered in, her face showing reluctance. The sound of hooves had reached the corner. Yi Guhan lifted his body upwards and skimmed through the air. Suddenly, he exclaimed in mid-air and changed his direction, moving towards Jun Xie. His sharp eyes analyzed the scene before him. Seeing the small dagger inserted into the throat of the assassin, he could not help but feel grateful. It turns out that the senior had already helped me solve this problem. This is truly humbling. Straightening his body, he left, floating up to the roof. With a blue flash, he suddenly disappeared. From the corner of the street, a robust horse marched out towards them. A young military officer in blue with an urgent expression on his face rushed close by. Seeing Princess Ling Meng standing safely there, he gave a sigh of relief. He quickly saluted and asked. Princess, are you all right? His concern was evident within his voice. Princess Ling Meng stared at him in a dazed manner. Slightly bending her body, she picked up the two flying daggers from the ground. Checking it in detail, the flying dagger was as thin as a layer of onion, exquisitely small and subtly curved with beautiful engravings. Princess Ling Meng became fond of it instantly. Her face revealed light traces of excitement. This is the divine weapon used by the Master Superior to even Uncle Yi. What a lovable dagger. This is. Dagger. The young man asked in a stammer. Princess, please be careful when dealing with these weapons. If not for the senior expert who shot out these flying daggers, I would have been killed by those assassins. There would be no chance for me to wait for your arrival. Naturally, Yi Guhan's existence cannot be revealed to those who were unrelated to her. Princess Ling Meng glanced at him briefly, her beautiful face showing traces of fatigue and a hint of sadness. When she chose to leave the palace in the past, there would be at least a jade-level expert escorting her. That was His Majesty's personal arrangement for her. Why would that expert suddenly be sent out on an errand? In addition, the several elite gold-level experts that usually accompanied her were all deployed elsewhere for some unknown reason. It was under such circumstances that she encountered assassins as she left the palace. What does all this mean? It goes without saying. Princess Ling Meng was extremely intelligent and was well aware of what was happening, but she tried to force herself not to think about it. She was unwilling to consider it. She dared not consider it. That was because the resulting scenario would be too painful for her to bear. Pain. Heartbreaking pain. If you want to struggle for the throne, then just do it. Why do you have to turn me into a tool for your struggle? Is the throne really that precious? Could it be that in your eyes, I am but a tool for you to further your interests. We may not share the same mother, but we have the same father, the same flesh and blood. Why? Why? Could it be true that there can be no love within the royal family? She felt the two flying daggers within her bosom coming in contact with her skin, releasing a cold sensation, yet Princess Ling Meng felt warm and safe. The mysterious Sky Xian expert saved her life and did not blame her for mistaking his deeds for others. This benevolent mindset caused an endless amount of fascination to well up within her. Yi Guhan was aware that the mysterious person's strength was probably above that of the Sky Xian rank, but Princess Ling Meng did not. She only knew what she saw, and that was the ocean like azure brilliance. Saving lives without showing even his shadow, drifting back and forth, leaving not a trace of his existence. Uncaring of rewards from others, much less the ignorance of those he saved. What kind of character is this? This is the character of a real master. A deep sense of trust was born within the heartbroken and frustrated Princess Ling Meng towards this mysterious figure. He is like a dragon that would show his head and not his tail. This created a belief that this person is highly dependable. In her heart, she felt that this mysterious person is just like her uncle Yi, worthy of her trust. With the flying dagger beside her, Princess Ling Meng suddenly felt herself becoming more courageous. Indeed, with a pinnacle Sky Xian expert and the solitary star of the horizon, Yi Guhan as their protector, anyone would be able to sit back and relax. She recovered from her daze, only to discover the young man staring at her. Princess Ling Meng became embarrassed and turned angry, her heart becoming depressed. This person is the eldest son of the city's Murong family, Murong Qianjun. He is the rising star of his generation from the Murong family where Princess Ling Meng's mother hailed from. In terms of relationship, Princess Ling Meng and him could be considered as cousins. He is considered one of the renowned handsome talents within the city. Ever since meeting Princess Ling Meng though, he was smitten as though she had captured his soul. He had requested his family for a military leader position in hopes of meeting and staying close to her and at the same time allow him to launch a frenzied pursuit for Princess Ling Meng. Since Jun Moxie stepped back 2 months ago, Murong Qianjun is now one of the top 2 suitors for Princess Ling Meng. The other suitor is the Grand Preceptor's grandson, Li Yuran. Chapter 64, Old Man in Grey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 064. Old Man in Grey. Looking at him, anyone would feel that this young Master Murong is a talent in both civil and military affairs, extraordinary in every aspect, blessed with handsome looks, highly capable in the field of martial arts, a perfect match for any woman. However, Princess Ling Meng felt that this person is very hypocritical. Before her, he seemed to always be wearing a mask of being deeply in love. As someone who lived within the palace all the time, she had no way of judging whether this face of his is true or false. How much of it is the truth? How much of it is fake? What is the true face and character of this person? Princess Ling Meng felt that she do not have the slightest grasp onto the answer for those questions. The other suitor is the first heir of the Li residence, Li Yuran, who holds the title of #1 gifted scholar in Tianxiang Kingdom. Likewise, he is someone who filled Princess Ling Meng with uncertainty. Li Yuran is handsome and well-mannered, graceful but not showy, and rarely showed himself. He had caused countless ladies from the capital city to become obsessed towards him. However, no matter what, he refused to show himself, causing him to be labeled as the #1 refined gentleman of Tianxiang Kingdom. Li Yuran would always show a warm and graceful countenance, never one to be either anxious or tardy. He seemed as though everything that was happening in the world was within the palm of his hands, that everything was within his expectations. However, Princess Ling Meng had always felt that it was impossible for there to be someone so perfect in this world. If this person's external appearance was but a camouflage, then he would be an even more horrifying, more unpredictable existence. No one could hope to understand what he was really thinking. Whenever she was together with this person, Princess Ling Meng would often be visited with an inexplicable feeling of dread. This feeling warned her that this gentle-looking youth before her is an extremely dangerous person. By comparison, the original June Moxie is someone who wore the greasy countenance of a rogue. He did not attempt to hide his nature, as though announcing to the world, "I am a rogue, and I am not afraid to show it." Even though his character is somewhat unbearable, at least he was someone who committed bad acts in the open. Despite being a scoundrel, his bad actions were all done openly and there was no need to fear him taking sinister actions in secrecy. Thinking about June Moxie, she suddenly recalled that this debauchee was just here not long ago, and he even gave her a warning. Regardless of whether it was on purpose or unintentional, it was at least a gesture of goodwill. However, it seemed that the assassins had already killed him off from the very beginning. When she considered this point, she quickly asked. "Quick, go find third young Master June and see how his condition is at the current." She could not help but feel anxious within her heart. Although her life was saved, she feared that June Moxie might have been killed off. That would cause Grandpa June to fly into a fit of rage. The resulting storm would likely be far worse than if she was the one killed. It appeared that the city was about to be plunged into a turbulent storm. Hopefully, her three brothers would not take advantage of the ensuing chaos by the angered Grandpa June and create an even bigger problem for the kingdom. Although she did not witness it for herself, Princess Ling Meng believed that June Moxie was most likely dead. After all, two of the assassins had appeared from June Moxie's direction. At that time, he had already fallen to the ground. If he had not died, would the assassin have left him alone? Several bodyguards went forth to search, but after searching all over, they were unable to find June Xie. That was because June Xie was currently being pinned down by the assassin's corpse to the point where their bodies perfectly overlapped with one another, leading to the bodyguard's failure to notice them. A rough-looking bodyguard rushed to report to the princess. "Princess, we could not find third young Master June's corpse. Perhaps the corpse stood up and ran away by itself." Listening to those words, Princess Ling Meng's face turned black to the point of puking blood. What nonsense is this? You could not find the corpse, so maybe the corpse stood up and ran away by itself. A corpse can run away by itself. Murong Qianjuan's face turned dark. What are you talking about? The guard panicked and started stammering. I meant, we failed to find third young Master June's corpse, maybe it left. No. I meant. Enough. Stop talking. Murong Qianjuan's face turned black. If you cannot find the corpse, that means you cannot say that he is dead. Even more so, you cannot call it a corpse. You should have said, the third young Master June's body had disappeared. Understand? The bodyguards all complained inwardly. Weren't you the one who said that he is dead? To think that you still have the face to lecture us. What a despicable person. Princess Ling Meng felt helpless and said. Go search again in detail. If you find third young Master June's body, quickly send it to the June family. Under their influence, Princess Ling Meng almost blurted the word corpse herself. After searching again, they were unable to find anything. Thus, Princess Ling Meng arranged for a bodyguard to report this matter to the June family. Not long after the bodyguard had left on horseback, a gray figure rushed out before them. This figure turned out to be a small, thin and withered-looking old man. Murong Qianjun unsheathed his sword and asked in a stern voice. Who? I am looking for someone. The little old man's face was a mask of depression, as he looked everywhere. His face filled with anxiousness, he turned a deaf ear towards Murong Qianjun's question. Murong Qianjun was greatly infuriated and shouted. Take him. Considering that an assassination attempt had just been carried out against the princess, this weirdo's appearance was a very suspicious event. The surrounding soldiers voiced their affirmation and was about to rush forward when they saw the old man suddenly becoming exulted. I finally found you. Haha. Why don't you run now? Your grandmother's little bastard. You have a sword piercing through you, huh? Let's see if you still dare to run away again. He shouted out in a gloating tone. All they saw was him kneeling down before an assassin's corpse and was in the process of pulling out a sword. He is in league with the assassins, take him down. Murong Qianjun became overjoyed. He felt that this person was really stupid. All the assassins here had already died and yet he chose to enter this place, which was surrounded by the army, to find a corpse. Surprisingly, the old man threw away the sword after pulling it out. Then, he lifted the corpse of the assassin and casually flung it away, just like how one would throw a sack, without a care in his actions. Bending down, he picked up a bloodied body. Princess Ling Meng hastily restrained Murong Qianjun before observing the body in detail. It turned out that it was Jun Moxie. He was covered in blood on both head and body, looking as though he was about to lose his life in a moment's notice. Suddenly, Jun Xie's eyes moved about, causing Princess Ling Meng to become shocked. It turns out that this bastard is still alive. May I ask this senior's identity? Princess Ling Meng asked. I do not have time to chat with you, little girl. This old bag need to hurry up to help him take care of his injuries. Otherwise, he might really kick the bucket. The old man picked up Jun Xie's body and with a flash, appeared before Murong Qianjun. Staring at Murong Qianjun, he scolded. Little bastard, next time, watch your language. Pulling back his head, he disappeared like a puff of smoke. Murong Qianjun was about to retort in anger when the old man before him suddenly disappeared without leaving a trail, causing him to fume in rage. However, with Princess Ling Meng here, he needed to maintain his graceful image and could only grit down heavily on his teeth. In his heart, he had successively cursed the old man's 18 generations of ancestors. This is bad. Princess Ling Meng's face changed. I have just sent someone to report to Senior General Jun. Now that Jun Moxie has been taken away, things would turn ugly if the Senior General becomes furious. Murong Qianjun stepped forth to comfort the princess. Princess, please be at ease and just return to the palace. I will immediately arrange for someone to go to the Jun family and report that Jun Moxie, this Yusul. This person is still alive. Princess Ling Meng let out a sigh of relief. That would be for the best. Turning her gaze, she suddenly noticed the flying dagger inserted into the throat of the assassin leader. She gave a cry of surprise. It turns out that the senior had already helped me take care of this future problem, and here I was being ignorant about it. She walked over and pulled out the dagger. Checking it, she found that it was indeed the same as the other two. She could not help but wonder. This person is a true peak-leveled master. I wonder when I will have the opportunity to meet him in person to give my thanks. Princess Ling Meng turned her head to see the miserable state of her team of bodyguards. She sighed. With things as they are, how could I hope to go to the Duga residence? Recalling Yi Guhan's advice for her, she spoke out. Return to the palace. List down the name of those who died, report it to the inner palace and ensure that their families are compensated generously. No longer able to bear the sight of carnage before her, Princess Ling Meng closed her eyes and slowly shed 2 drops of tears. These men all died. For her sake. Chapter 65, Unexpected. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 065 Unexpected. Regular chapter. As the carriage was destroyed, Princess Ling Meng leaped onto a horse brought over by one of the bodyguards and slowly headed back. The atmosphere was unusually somber. Murong Qianjun immediately ordered the army to escort the princess, forming a protection detail with Princess Ling Meng in the middle. He himself rode atop his horse. Turning his head, he thought to himself. That bastard Jun Moxie seemed to have suffered from some serious injuries. I wonder if he will make it. It would be for the best if he dies. Every time I see him, I feel like smashing him down. He is just a typical scum waiting for a beating. He wanted to court Princess Ling Meng with that kind of character. He truly is a brat who does not understand his own abilities. Grunting, he urged his horse forward and watched the graceful figure of Princess Ling Meng who was proceeding before him. He could not help but feel dazzled, his heart absolutely captivated, his soul ascending the confines of his body. He completely forgot to send someone to report the earlier matter to the Jun family. I say, old man. You have been following me like a ghost for a good 3 days. Could it be that I am so handsome to the point where you have taken a fancy to me? The old man was carrying Jun Xie, similar to how one would carry a baby in their arms. The old man's body was very withered, it seemed that there was no flesh on his entire body. This caused Jun Xie an unspeakable feeling of discomfort, as though he was lying on a cobblestone ground. Knowing that this old man would not harm him, he threw away all notions of courtesy and started speaking sarcastically. Pooh! You think this senior was following a prodigal wastrel like you voluntarily? You kept scurrying around randomly every day, I do not even know what kind of hidden tactic you used to escape from my sight. But look at you now. This is retribution. If not for the fact that your grandfather spent a great sum of. How did you know I have been following you for 3 days? The old man was indignant, he felt that being together with this debauchee was something shameful. Just as he was about to grumble, he suddenly realized something wrong, something very wrong. How did this useless brat realize that I have been following him for 3 days? Could it be that this senior's tracking skills have regressed until such a degree? The old man became startled and suddenly stopped. He no longer cared about the disrespectful manner in which Jun Xie used to address him. Fool! Did you have to ask such a simple question? Naturally, someone told me, Jun Xie casually threw out an answer after thinking it through. Even though this old man's tracking skills was unable to escape Jun Xie's senses, it was still first-rate even when compared to his past life's experiences. Considering the original Jun Moxie's abilities, he would not be able to realize it even after training for hundreds of years, let alone escape from the old man's sight. That you are the real fool. You are such a fool, it is only natural that you would not be able to discover this senior. Who told you about it? Was that person the one who taught you how to escape from my sight? The old man felt shocked. He was actually unaware that his tracking skills were being countered. In addition, that person possessed the ability to guide this useless being, Jun Moxie, to shake him off his tail. This was simply horrifying. How much strength is needed for this feat if this person is an enemy? How do I know who that person is? Jun Xie continued. I have never met him. Oh. That is only natural. Considering how powerful the other person is, do you think you have the qualifications to meet him? But since you put it this way, you being able to escape from my sight was all due to that person's instructions. That person was the one who taught you. The old man was prejudiced and had already decided that this debauchee had absolutely no ability to discover his existence. After all, he had absolute confidence in his own tracking skills. However, he asked just in case. His heart became alarmed. Could it be that a supreme divine Xian is watching me? That cannot be. Could it be? The more he thought about it, the more his mind became panicked. Truth be told, this old man's techniques were indeed impressive. Otherwise, it would not have taken Jun Xie, the king of assassins of his generation, a good 3 days to deal with him. Of course. By the way, old man, are you done talking? Why are continuously asking about all this? Where are you planning to take me to? You should hurry up and bring me home. Jun Xie was feeling uncomfortable and started cursing within. Quickly send me back home so that I can use the Hongjun Pagoda to heal myself. If I were to do it outside and get exposed, what then? Nonsense. Judging by the amount of injuries you have, I will need to quickly handle it first. Otherwise, you would be dead by the time I reach your home. The old man was feeling unhappy himself. With my level of skill, how could I have ended up being counter-tracked? Son of a bitch. If I were to return directly to the June residence, your old head would throw a bunch of depressing complaints on me to the point of death. If I do not clean this brat up, going back like this would be too humiliating. While talking, they arrived at an inferior-looking house. Holding June Xie, the old man rushed into it and placed June Xie onto the ground. After that, he carefully checked the wounds on June Xie's body from top to bottom. He could not help but be astonished. On June Xie's chest, a sword had nearly pierced straight through him. In addition, 2 purple bruises could be clearly seen. This was obviously the result of 2 kicks aimed at his chest. Considering the strength of the 2 silver-level assassins, an attack by either one of them should have been enough to send him off. Yet, after having suffered from a stab to the chest and 2 kicks from them, June Xie was able to preserve his life and still talk casually. This was not even the most astonishing point. What was truly outrageous was that not a single rib was broken. The old man sent his Xian Qi into June Xie's meridians to carefully check. June Xie's internal organs had received no damage, internal injuries were lacking, causing him to stare with bulging eyes. This sword stab was simply too skilled. It actually went through the intercostal area between ribs. This brat's luck is simply too good. Brat, did you by any chance hire those assassins? If that weren't the case, why would they take so much care when dealing against you? Just by looking at your wounds, I highly suspect that you guys planned this in advance. Were you planning on playing the hero saving the damsel in distress? You wanted to win the favor of that beautiful little girl. The old man stroked his beard, his eyes slanted, his face turning highly obscene. The old man's whimsical words almost caused June Xie to choke to death. He laughed bitterly. Old man, you sure have an imaginative mind. I nearly died earlier, how was I supposed to play the hero saving the damsel? Why are you staying still? Quick, help me bandage my thigh, can't you see that it is still bleeding? June Xie was somewhat rendered speechless. This old man was already an aged senior, but why was his action so disorderly? Why did his grandfather hire someone like this to tail him? Pooh! You useless little brat, you think this senior needs you to instruct me on how to do things? The old man stroked his beard. Brat, you are a lucky one, you won't die. You also won't become crippled. Having said that, he patted June Xie on his thigh and continued. Everything is fine now. June Xie's thigh had just been pierced with a sword. Even though his bones were not harmed, the sword pierced through his muscles. 1 sword, 2 holes, to be patted by the old man on the thigh at his current situation caused him to feel a heart-rending pain. June Xie bit his teeth, sucking the air and hissing, beads of sweat dripping out from his forehead. As he continued hissing through his teeth, he asked. Old man, do you have a granddaughter? The old man suddenly stared at him with vigilant eyes. What do you want to do? He forgot to think why this brat had asked him to treat the thigh first. By his observation, the wound on the chest took precedence. If you have a granddaughter, I will rape her and then kill her. I will send you to your death by breaking your heart, you old bastard. June Xie cursed inwardly. Can't you see that I am seriously injured? Yet, you actually violently slapped down on my wound. Oh, I meant that it would be better to let a woman do this kind of job. The person was just before him, how could he not lower his head? Unacceptable. The old man shook his head. You are a pervert, this is something known to everyone in Tianxiang City. June Xie was completely speechless. Why are you calling me a pervert? The real pervert is June Moxie, not me. By the time the old man finished treating June Xie's wounds, it was already late at night. Of the 2, one of them wanted to use the Hongjun Pagoda to heal his injuries so that he could get better immediately. However, he did not have the opportunity to do so, and was endlessly irritated. The other one kept thinking to himself. Who exactly was it that could discover my existence and counter my tracking skills? These 2 insensitive creatures actually forgot to report this matter to the June family. As for Murong Qianjun, who had vowed to Princess Ling Meng that he would send a message to the Jun family, he had long since thrown this negligible matter out the window. Neither of them considered the fact that Princess Ling Meng had, before the old man appeared, sent a message to the Jun family, bringing the news of Jun Moxie's disappearance, death. They did not consider that this delay could lead to grandfather Jun Zhantian's fury soaring all the way to the 9 heavens, almost causing the entire capital to become a sea of blood. Incidentally, just when night arrived, the same time that Princess Ling Meng had encountered the assassins, the forces within the Tang residence began moving. Chapter 66, Northern City Clan Under Siege. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 066, Northern City Clan Under Siege. Regular chapter. Grandfather Tang's face was sullen as he stood before the main door, his eyes flashing with a faint trace of hope. He finally found a trace of something, which may or may not be a clue. However, Grandfather Tang could no longer wait. Sending forth his forces in the day would cause too much of a ruckus, but now that night had fallen, he had assembled all of Tang family's experts. 246 men. 2 mid-stage Earth Xian ranked experts, 4 Jade-leveled Xian experts, 12 Gold level, 30.6 Silver level, with the rest at the pinnacle stage of 9th level Xian Qi cultivation. For this time's movement, Grandfather Tang Wanli had assembled the Tang family's forces from inside the city and out. Within the short time span of one afternoon, Grandfather Tang had mobilized these men, who were the strongest within the Tang family. These were the foundations of the Tang family. No mistakes were allowed in this operation. For today's operation, the objective is the Northern City Clan. Tang Wanli addressed everyone present with a sullen face. Keep in mind that no one from Northern City Clan should be allowed to escape, especially those with the position of Hall Master or higher. Do not kill, do not be rash, capture them all. Understood. Understood. The crowd answered in unison. They do not know the reason for going against the Northern City Clan. They also felt that this level of mobilization to deal with a mere Northern City Clan was somewhat of an overkill, but seeing the grim expression on Tang Wanli's face, none of them dared say anything. Today's operation will be directed by this senior. If any of you were to let slip a member of Northern City Clan, then just send your head to see me. Grandfather Tang gave out a strict command, then slowly scanned everyone present. Seeing everyone became more alert, he waved his hand. Move out. 246 men in black garbs silently headed out the door. Grandfather Tang's cloak billowed in the night wind as he strode towards the door. Although he was old, he was still robust, his every step exuded intensity and signified his indomitable determination towards tonight's operation. Wait. I will go as well. Following the voice, a figure in black rushed out from the inner courtyard. This figure was wrapped in black cloth and resembled a human-shaped black meatball. Even though Tang Yuan do not have the required body shape for nocturnal activities, he still wanted to join in the fun. However, due to his body shape being overly that, he finally decided to simply wrap himself in black cloth before rushing out. Roll back to your room. Watching the human dumpling rolling towards him, Grandfather Tang became furious. He performed a flying kick, which resulted in the 400 over gene, 241 kilograms, body of Tang Yuan to shoot back from the courtyard into the room, breaking the door of the room in the process. With a tearing sound, the black cloth tore open, revealing white buttocks and thighs. His round stomach resting upon the ground, his hands and legs were hanging in the air, just like a tortoise that had fallen upside down. He waved his limbs in the air several times with nothing to leverage himself off the ground. After rolling over twice, he finally managed to stand up by grabbing the door. He looked out with a disheartened expression. The courtyard was black and empty, not a soul in sight. A grand residence in the middle of the dark night. Within the residence was the leadership of the Northern City Clan. Grandfather Tang's beard fluttered about as he arranged his men. Over 100 high-level experts were arranged here, causing the huge residence to become filled. Everyone remained breathless as they waited quietly for Grandfather Tang to issue his command. As for the other 100 men, Grandfather Tang had them separated into 4 groups, each assigned to cover the 4 doorways of the Northern City clan, their subordinates, the casinos, brothels and all other places that were connected to the Northern City clan, even the houses of all the leadership of Northern City clan. Grandfather Tang intended to sweep them all up from the outside to the inside, leaving not a single one. The leadership of Northern City clan would be left for the last. With over 100 high-level experts surrounding the residence, the people inside were completely trapped with no hope of escape. Anyone who came out would be captured. In addition, he could utilize this type of blunt knife attack to probe the attitude of Northern City clan. If Northern City clan remained passive, placing themselves at his mercy, that would mean that Northern City clan had nothing to do with the Tang residence's theft case. Even if there were some connection, it would likely be a trivial one. However, if Northern City clan were to fight back desperately to the point of death in order to break out, Grandfather Tang believed that would signify him catching a big fish. Even now, Grandfather Tang felt doubtful towards this information provided by Tang Yuan. It would be more accurate to say he was very skeptical towards it. A clue found by the renowned debauches, Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan. No matter how I look at it, the credibility is simply too low. If I were to say it out, who would believe it? Alas, I can only blame myself for getting too carried away. After all, I am simply too desperate right now. I will just consider this an act of helping the common people get rid of some scourge. However, if I were to find out that this matter is a trick from those 2 debauches trying to settle their personal scores. Even if Jun Zhantian tries to stop me, this senior will capture both Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan and give them a good beating. I will beat Jun Moxie until he becomes fat and beat Tang Yuan until he becomes thin. Let their body shape change, hein. Grandfather Tang's face was a mask of volatility as he gritted his teeth. Watching the alley before him, he saw sacks of tied-up captives increasing one by one like dumplings. Grandfather Tang let out a sigh, having made up his mind to return home and give those 2 debauches a good lesson. Those 2 debauches have grown too daring. It had been half a long hour since this residence was surrounded. All the people coming out of this place were caught one after another, their inner chi sealed, their limbs tied up, their mouths stuffed and were piled up here. The number of men caught had become quite significant and should have caused some sort of response. However, there was still no response from them. Thus, Grandfather Tang believed that Northern City clan had nothing to do with the theft of the Xian core. That actually made sense. After all, what can this Northern City clan amount to? Could they have the guts to disturb the tiger whiskers of my Tang family? Silhouettes appeared from all directions as the experts from the Tang family all returned one after another, their hands carrying a few people, all of them captured and bundled. The raid against the outer side of Northern City clan had concluded. Grandfather Tang was greatly disappointed, his face twitching, his heart cursing. Tang Yuan. Jun Moxie. This senior will never forgive you 2 bastards. You dared to come together to trick me into acting as your pawn. This senior swear that. Grandfather Tang did not have the time to consider what it was he intended to do because at this moment, countless dark figures leaped out from within the residential walls of the Northern City clan. Each of them wielded projectiles which they let loose, creating a rain of projectiles to descend upon the experts from the Tang family's ambush team. At the same time, a shout was heard from within and people started charging out from the main door, back door and side door, akin to an exploding grenade. They dared to wage war without declaring their intent and did not even show any desire to negotiate things with Grandfather Tang. In addition, all of them were desperately trying to run away, as though resenting the fact that their parents only gave them 2 legs. What does this mean? Holy crap! The reaction turned out to be so intense. Was there any difference between their current actions with those of rebels? Grandfather Tang stared with bulging eyes, his eyes almost popping out. This sudden change in scenario caused Grandfather Tang's mind to lag for a bit. After a while, he fiercely slapped his own thigh. The pain caused him to exhale, his heart bursting with excitement. A show is coming. Several shouts were heard from the members of the Tang family's ambushing team. The change happened too quickly, in addition to the fact that there were differences in their level of strength caused no small number of them to be hit by the projectiles. The injuries caused by this sudden attack were not light. The remaining men separated and charged towards the members of Northern City Clan that were rushing out. The sounds of swords clashing could be heard as the distance between both sides closed. The brilliant colors of purple, black, silver and gold flashed out upon the entire area, painting a breathtaking view for the moment. The interval of time between the moment Northern City Clan members threw out the projectiles until the moment they rushed out to fight was very short. It could be said to have occurred simultaneously. Chapter 67, A Lucky Hit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 067, A Lucky Hit. Regular chapter. Grandfather Tang's eyes bulged out in surprise, his face, which had been a mask of gloominess, had now turned into one of excitement, and his hands trembled agitatedly. Both his eyes glinted as Grandfather Tang, who had been a calm person for nearly half his life, burst out. Oh, my God! There is actually a connection between them. In fact, this might be the jackpot. Screw that son of a bitch. How could I have guessed that Tang Yuan could actually make a contribution this time around? Who was the one who said that a blind cat could not bump into a dead rat? This senior will have to properly reward him when I return later. After thinking such, Grandfather Tang's face suddenly became awkward. He glanced around, just like a thief that had committed a crime. I should not have called Tang Yuan a son of a bitch, that is my daughter. Lol. Northern City Clan's reaction made it clear that it has a connection with the Tang family's theft case. Otherwise, would a mere Northern City Clan dare to fight against a Duke of the Kingdom and the family of the Minister of State Revenue? This family is a first-grade family in Tianxiang Kingdom. For them to offend such a family was akin to a cat licking the tiger's nose, a standard example of one trying to court death. Seeing the members of Northern City Clan who rushed out getting thrown to the ground and tied up before being tossed over to his side, Grandfather Tang coughed a few times, his arms straight. His gaze were similar to a falcon, his face as clear as water, his beard fluttering, an image of immovable might. He exuded an aura of seriousness as he dispatched his men to eliminate a source of calamity for the people. Pang! A member of the Northern City Clan was beaten up into the air. Before he could do anything, a rope shot out to encircle his waist. It continued to fasten around him a few times until he became a big dumpling and fell to the ground. The person was then greeted with a fist to the face and his teeth fell out as a result. Before he could scream out, a smelly mass of red cloth was stuffed into his mouth. Then, he was picked up and thrown some several zhangs, 3.04 m, away. The entire process was conducted in a smooth manner. When the person fell down, he realized that he was not alone and that everyone around him were acquaintances. Pang! Another one. Pang! The 240-plus experts of the Tang family slowly advanced from the outside into the inner area, not letting a single member escape, keeping a careful eye over every detail. 3 gold-leveled Xian Qi experts were surrounding the Northern City Clan leader Qin Hu. No matter which direction he took, no matter how much he tried to fight, no matter how hard he tried to run, he was unable to escape, his face was filled with despair. Not far away, an Earth-ranked expert stood by, watching with his hands behind his back. Qin Hu was unable to escape or retreat, he could not even kill himself. If not for the fact that the 3 of them were aiming to capture him alive, he would have been sent off to the Yellow Springs a long time ago. Qin Hu felt himself going crazy. As all the areas were swept clean, the experts from the Tang family began to gather here. Some of them rushed into the residential yard and started searching meticulously, not missing out on even the smallest detail. If they suspect that a place was hiding a secret passage, they would dig 3 feet down to verify their suspicion. After a while, a sound rang out. Found it. Grandfather Tang's face became joyful as he moved forward into the courtyard. Inside, he saw the experts from the Tang residence dragging out several people. It was none other than Qin Hu's son, Qin Xiaobao, and several gorgeously dressed women. Qin Hu had placed them within the clan's most secretive hidden chamber. He thought that if his attempt to break out were to fail, then at least he could keep his son safe. Unexpectedly, the men from the Tang family would be so professional, and the hidden chamber that was located 1 zhang below ground with a highly secretive exit location was found. Watching his son being captured, Qin Hu despaired and totally lost the courage to resist. If not for fear that Qin Hu would disregard his life and fight to the bitter end, the 3 men would have captured him by now. As of now, he had lost the will to fight. The 3 gold-level experts moved forward simultaneously. Pa pa. Qin Hu's body fell, like a piece of soft mud. Control over his body and authority over his own life and death no longer belonged to him. A complete victory. Grandfather Tang slowly walked before Qin Hu. Glancing down at Qin Hu's depressed face, he waved his hands. The surrounding men all retreated to the side, leaving an empty space in the middle of the land. Where is the item? Grandfather Tang asked in a low voice, his gaze keeping a close watch on Qin Hu's eyes. He went straight to the point, not letting Qin Hu have any chance of denying. This question from him was one that could create a false impression for Qin Hu. I already know that you are the one who stole the Xian core. I have already obtained undeniable proof towards this matter. All that is lacking now is your cooperation. As long as Qin Hu was involved in the theft of the Xian core, hearing such a question while being rendered prisoner would lead to a 90% chance of causing his mind to collapse. Sure enough, Qin Hu's mouth gaped as he became tongue-tied, a look of complete despair escaping from his eyes. Grandfather Tang, who had been keeping a close eye on Qin Hu's reaction, became ecstatic, the suspense he felt in his heart finally abated. It truly is a jackpot. Tang Yuan, oh Tang Yuan, this grandson had finally managed to accomplish something. In addition, this is a great accomplishment, looks like there could be some hope for him. Wait, this matter seemed to have been brought up by that Jun family's debauchee, Jun Moxie. Grandfather Tang suddenly had another thought. It seems having a bunch of debauches together is not necessarily a bad thing. At least they had proven useful at the most critical of moments. Back then, didn't everyone constantly say that I am just a debauchee? But, right now. Realizing that his thought process had started going off the tangent, Grandfather Tang collected himself. In his heart, he decided that regardless of whether he could find the Xian core today, his Tang family now owed the Jun family a great favor. It seemed that he will have to improve their relationship with the Jun family. I do not know anything about the Xian core, Tang. Boss, why would you suddenly do this to us? Qin Hu answered in a fluster, his eyes flashing, hoping that he could get lucky. You little brat sure can talk, when did this senior ask anything about a Xian core? He. It is all right if you do not know. I will let you remember soon enough. Grandfather Tang laughed out in a compassionate manner as he waved his hand. An expert from the Tang family came forth carrying Qin Xiaobao's body. Throwing Qin Xiaobao on the floor, he turned around and left. Qin Hu, I hear that this is your only son. I promise you, as long as you tell me everything, no matter what happens to the Northern City clan, your son will not be harmed. I will protect this last remaining heir of your Qin family and ensure that no harm befalls him. Grandfather Tang wanly laughed affably, giving off a very amiable attitude. Naturally, if you are still unable to remember anything at all, I believe you will have to witness your own son's suffering soon. But, when that happens, everyone would not have a pleasant ending. You understand what I am saying, don't you? Father, save me. Qin Xiaobao cried out miserably. This year had proven to be a very disastrous one for him. Back then, he had chanced upon a beauty in the streets and only spouted out a few flirtatious remarks. But in return, he was captured, his dantian broken and his xian qi cultivation destroyed. After his body was better and he could finally move again, he went to a wine shop only to have a snot smack him on his face. Back then, he only let out a few curses but was rewarded with a beating and even had his leg broken. After having cried his way back home, he thought he would finally be able to start nursing his injuries. Unexpectedly, something like this happened instead. He was carried out and thrown on the ground despite his broken legs. Qin Xiaobao was currently drowning in a whirlpool of fear, nervousness and pain, sinking deeper into a pit of sorrow. Grandfather Tang slowly extended his hand, his withered hands gently stroked Qin Xiaobao's neck, just like how one would try to placate a frightened little puppy. However, everyone knew that if Qin Hu's answer could not satisfy Grandfather Tang, those withered hands would transform into the token of command from the King of Hell. Qin Hu suddenly let out a sigh and lowered his head. "You win." Grandfather Tang smiled proudly and replied. "Qin Hu, you are truly worthy of being a clan leader. You understand how to grasp the situation properly, not bad." The sarcastic comment stabbed deep into Qin Hu, his face turning red. This humiliation caused his face to turn extremely ugly. After mumbling to himself for a bit, he finally said. "I believe that Senior Duke already understand that this matter was done under someone else's orders. Otherwise, even if I had a sky-piercing courage, I would never dare to steal something from the Tang residence. That would be no different from courting death. Even if we wish to do so, we do not have the capital to. We really could not." Continue talking, Grandfather Tang's eyes flashed. TL. Yellow Springs equals afterlife. Chapter 68, In the Night You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 068. In the Night Sponsored Chapter. Sponsored by Yago Spencer from UK Anonymous. A big thank you to the sponsors. Thank you for the support. Grandfather Tang is a veteran in the matters of the world. Considering the strength of Qin Hu's northern city clan, there was no way he would have dared to act presumptuously against a great power like his Tang family. At this moment in time, it was also highly unlikely for him to say any form of lies that would erode the trust he needed to gain from them. But if what he said was true, then there was a deeper layer of unknown factors within all this. Grandfather Tang's reaction caused Qin Hu to feel that Grandfather Tang had chosen to trust him. He felt hope blooming within him. Even if he could not be spared, at least his son would have the chance to live on. He continued. "I do not know the origin of the person who instructed me. What I know is that this person has eyes and ears everywhere. The layout of Senior Duke's residence, the hidden location of the treasure, every aspect of the plan including the timing of our movement was decided by that person. I believe that the person in question must be one of the capitals." Having said that, Qin Hu's eyes suddenly widened, a look of horror appeared in his eyes as he shouted out in fear. "Senior Duke, please save me." At this moment, a sharp sound suddenly rang out and a great yellow radiance rose forth, a great pressure converged upon them from all directions. It was as though the skies were suddenly filled with several small suns as an earthly yellow light completely illuminated the night skies. Earth-ranked Xian Qi experts. 3 lithe figures descended like lightning, charging towards Grandfather Tang from 3 directions. Every one of them were masked and wearing black garbs, revealing only their yellow-colored eyes. The experts from the Tang family all cried out in surprise, all of them rushed forward without a care for their own lives. Unfortunately, with their limited level of strength, they were unable to stop the earth-ranked Xian experts. Grandfather Tang sneered and shouted. "Which rat dares?" With his white beard fluttering about, his entire body emitted an even heavier glow of earthen yellow light and he walked forward, keeping Qin Hu protected behind him. The opposing faction's intention was obviously to silence the witness. But Qin Hu was currently the only clue that Grandfather Tang has in his quest to recover the Xian core. How could he allow them to succeed? No matter what, he must stop them and preserve Qin Hu's life. Only with Qin Hu alive could he have any chance of finding out who was behind the theft. If he could find out who was behind the theft, he could recover the Xian core. Only by recovering the Xian core could his Tang family build a foundation to preserve the Tang family for the next 100 years. Grandfather Tang's eyes have turned red. Hong! 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 Tang Wanli charged forward alone, blocking all 3 attacks by those experts who were cooperating. He attacked without defending, just like an insane tiger. For these men, killing a mere Qin Hu was not a problem. However, if they were to kill Grandfather Tang, that would be an act of declaring war with the entire Tianxiang kingdom. This type of consequence was not something that any ordinary person could casually accept. Thus, Grandfather Tang had nothing to fear. For one moment, he was able to hold back 3 Earth Xian ranked experts who were at the same stage. The 4 of them came together, circling one another as they attacked. Everyone in the yard became unsettled as the dust rose around the 4 of them. The other 2 Earth Xian experts from the Tang family immediately joined in the fray to support the house master. These 6 men exchanged killing blows while those below Earth Xian were simply unable to interfere in the fight. Bring Qin Hu to safety first. Grandfather Tang shouted out. It was at this moment that a pale blue light shone out and a masked man in white suddenly appeared. In the darkness of the night, his contrasting white clothes made him particularly conspicuous. His demeanor was casual, as though he was simply taking a stroll, but his speed was quick to the extreme. The blue light flashed out and 4 wretched cries sounded out in unison. 4 of the Hall Masters of Northern City Clan had their heads burst open, their bodies then falling down onto the ground. Beginner Stage Sky Xian. A Sky Xian expert. The 200 experts from the Tang family swarmed around him, forming a heavy defensive line. However, it was completely disregarded by this man who simply moved forward as though he was unhindered. His body floated 3 zhangs, 9.12 m, up in the air. With a flash of blue light, Qin Xiaobao who was lying on the ground could only cry out once as the area between his chest and abdomen was smashed to pulp. Grandfather Tang Wanli howled out. He turned and charged towards the man in white. The man in white looked at the incoming Grandfather Tang, his eyes which were filled with contempt flashed with a dazzling blue light. His palm shot out to greet Grandfather Tang's attack, causing Grandfather Tang to retreat several paces. Grandfather Tang gave out a "hein," his beard trembling. The man in white swirled in the air as he moved forth, repelling all the experts from the Tang residence by simply using the domineering might of his Xian Qi. Without looking to his back, he suddenly delivered a backhand strike. The one behind him was none other than Qin Hu. Qin Hu sprayed out mouthful of blood, hissing and crying out. How ruthless! Senior Duke Tang, this is the one who... Before he could continue, he suddenly cried out miserably, his body falling softly onto the ground, not a single piece of his bones were left intact. Hee hee. The man in white lightly laughed before shouting in a low tone. Let's move. The blue light burst out, causing all the men from the Tang residence to stagger backwards. The 3 Earth Xian ranked experts moved quickly towards the wall. With a flash of yellow radiance, all 3 men leapt over the walls and disappeared. The man in white however remained standing on the wall, his white robes billowing gracefully in the wind. He cupped his hands and said in a refined tone. Senior Duke Tang, I had no choice but to offend you today. Your nobility is renowned, I hope you will not take today's incident to heart. May we meet again. He laughed out. With a flash of blue light, his body rose to the skies and the night sky regained its dark tone. Grandfather Tang clutched his chest and coughed out a number of times. He could feel that the man in white strength was truly impressive and had been going easy on him. Otherwise, the earlier palm would have been sufficient to deal a serious internal injury to him. Even though he realized this, Grandfather Tang could not help but tremble with fury. Observing the corpses of northern city clans Qin Hu and his son and that of the 4 hall masters whose heads were burst open, Grandfather Tang felt his hands and feet turning cold. A Sky Xian expert like this should have appeared in my own family. I am unable to accept it. It was not easy for them to find this major clue. And yet, during the moment of success, someone suddenly appeared to cut it off. He had assembled the strongest 200 men from the Tang family. However, they could only stand and watch as their witness was silenced. Grandfather Tang himself had to accept a humiliating act of mercy from the enemy. This was simply intolerable. Watching Grandfather Tang gasping for breath, the surrounding men from the Tang family all lowered their heads in shame. Suddenly, a deep, imposing yet mournful pounding sound reverberated out throughout the sky from somewhere far away. It was like the billowing waves of the horizon, the muffled sound of thunder from the edge of the world. It slowly spread out with each beat, bringing an image of storm-crushing and world-trampling momentum. As this sound rose out, the atmosphere throughout the world seemed to have transformed into one of grievances and bloodshed. Even the darkness of the night was no exception, as it became even heavier. The towering sound that had appeared so suddenly did not become slower due to the passage of time. It instead became louder and louder. Eventually the sound resonated out from all 4 directions within Tianxiang city. It had begun as a slow deep pounding before growing in intensity, again and again until it turned into a huge flood, drowning all of the world within its rampant sound. This is the thunderous sound produced from the drums of war. A prelude to a scene of carnage and bloodbath. This is a ground-splitting, sky-shocking sound. It served as the spark that would bring forth the fires of war. General's summoning drum. After decades of silence, in this quiet night, the highest form of command from the most powerful military family in Tianxiang Kingdom had suddenly begun rumbling again. Whenever the general's summoning drum was heard, it could only result in a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. 10,000 cavalry and thousands of soldiers would begin rampaging, causing the demise of countless lives. It also meant that a portion of these soldiers would close their eyes forever while a small number of them would traverse the sea of blood and climb the mountain of corpses to claim a position of power. Everywhere within the Tianxiang, countless soldiers woke up from their sleep with a start and they quickly get dressed. Within the eyes of these soldiers, a bloodthirsty flame burned brightly. This is Grand Marshal Jun's general's summoning drum. One of the Earth Xian experts from the Tang family shouted out, causing everyone to become startled. Chapter 69, Raging Despair. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thank you for all the support and upvotes on novel updates and manga updates. Here is 2 bonus chapters. Chapter 069, Raging Despair. Tang Wanli stood there in absolute shock, his eyes opened wide, his mouth gaping. This sudden sound from the drums of war had caused him to forget about the humiliation and unhappiness that was just roiling about within his heart. His entire being had only one thought. Jun Zhantian has gone mad. This old bastard. Why is he going crazy? He is going to go mad while his Jun family is at its weakest. Everyone is to return to the Tang residence immediately. Those who serve in the military are to return now and report after changing. As for the rest, without my orders no one is allowed to take even a step out of the residence. Grandfather Tang acted decisively, giving out one order after another in succession. Instantly, dozens of them ceremoniously saluted before turning around and running away hastily. Their movement speed had exceeded the fastest speed that they could muster. The moment that the general's summoning drum resounded, it signified that the situation had reached a highly critical point. There was no doubt that any officer who dared to show up late would end up being decapitated. The strictness of Jun Zhantian was known to all in the military. Right or wrong would be decided with a finger. Those who violate his command, regardless of status, be they royalty, generals, children from the first-rate families, child of a phoenix or even the grandchild of a dragon, all shall be killed without exception. The sound of horse hooves striking the ground could constantly be heard from all directions. Like the waters of a raging river, all of them surged towards the military field within the city center. Everyone's armor was distinctly clear, their faces filled with eagerness as they urged their warhorses forward. "Duke, what do we do with the rest of them?" one of the experts from the Tang family asked, indicating the remnants of the northern city clan. "Bring them all home and question them all carefully." Grandfather Tang knew that this would not bear any fruit, but decided to hold on to the hopes of a what if. As the warhorses galloped forth one after another, the military forces within and outside the city all gathered within their barracks in a state of urgency. The military trumpets of the barracks were blaring out at full force as every soldier maintained the highest state of readiness. They were ready for their superiors to return and accept their orders. Once their orders were received, they would all move out. "Grandpa Jun has gone mad." These words were not false in the slightest. By the time Princess Ling Meng sent someone to the Jun residence, it had already been half a long hour since the assassination attempt took place. Then, Grandpa Jun was reading in his study, his old face was smiling, expressing satisfaction. His grandson had turned over a new leaf. In addition, the level of strength and perseverance that he had shown was far beyond the young masters of the noble families in Tianxiang City. None of them were worthy of compare. Seeing such a hope appear at the moment when the Jun family was slowly dying, how could Grandpa Jun not feel elated? As he was feeling highly elated, the housekeeper old Pang gently knocked on his door. With a heavy face, he walked in and informed that Princess Ling Meng had sent someone to report a matter to the house master. Jun Zhantian immediately had the man sent in. But when he met the man, he saw that the man was covered in blood. This caused Grandpa Jun's heart to thump. Seeing the man's hesitant manner of speech and eyes that darted to the left and right, Grandpa Jun started to feel a sense of foreboding, his face turning ugly. Old Pang who was standing behind him was wearing a strange expression, causing Jun Zhantian to further feel that something was wrong. Under the constant pressure of questioning, the bodyguard finally said. The third young master Jun's corpse had disappeared. It was a simple and short sentence. But for Jun Zhantian, it was like the booming sound of 10,000 thunders from the 9 heavens roaring out in unison. His body trembled a few times, his face turned pale and the atmosphere around him turned silent in an instant. Old Pang was surprised, but thankfully he was prepared. He immediately pinched and slapped Grandpa Jun on his chest, allowing Grandpa Jun to recollect himself. The bodyguard trembled as he knelt on the floor, not daring to move in the slightest. Everyone knew how important the debauchee, Jun Moxie was in Grandpa Jun's heart. Any mistake in dealing with him would end up inviting a terrifying disaster. After Grandpa Jun recollected himself, he coughed out some blood, his face turning grayish-white, his pair of eyes turning dim and hazy. However, his mouth did not lose its strength as it asked in a deep voice. "What exactly happened? Tell me everything slowly, do not miss out on even a single detail." Even though his voice was low, the words carried a heavy feeling to it, akin to a huge mountain, pressing down with immense force. The bodyguard had already been scared stiff, his face deathly white, he slowly described the details of what happened. As he was talking, Grandpa Jun's face turned into a scowl, not uttering anything at all. After the bodyguard finished talking, Jun Zhantian weakly waved his hands and said, "You can leave now." The guard reacted as though he had just received amnesty and retreated while shivering. He then realized that his whole body had been soaked with his sweat. In the study, Jun Zhantian closed his eyes and raised his head upwards, his Adam's apple rolled up and down for a bit. A tear slipped out from his wrinkled eyes. If Jun Xie had been the same as the original Jun Moxie, an unbearable and misbehaving debauchee, Grandpa Jun would not be in such pain due to this matter. Because he had already given up on him, even if such a tragedy had occurred, so what? The demise of the Jun family was a foregone conclusion. For it to come earlier was no big deal. But the problem lied in the fact that Jun Zhantian had just witnessed his own grandson's incredible transformation, he had finally seen a dazzling light, a brilliant radiance of hope. He had become excited and had begun to imagine how the June family could climb back up when this unexpected news suddenly came, throwing Grandpa June into an abyss of despair. Considering the situation, for Grandpa June to not go crazy on the spot was something that required quite the respectable amount of self-control. Moxie had died for the sake of warning Princess Ling Meng. This was Grandpa June's first inference. The assassin's goal was Princess Ling Meng, and the only ones with such an outrageous amount of courage would be either the three princes or the hostile forces from the other kingdoms. However, the current position of Crown Prince remained vacant and the three princes were in the midst of competing against one another for it. Under such circumstances, the other kingdoms would not choose to make such a radical move. Thus, the most probable suspects were the three princes. This was his second inference. Thirdly, the princess was supposed to be the main target of the assassination attempt. But Moxie had died while the princess did not. This had revealed something strange within this matter. Could it be that it was Moxie's enemies, the Li and Meng families? Did they hire the assassins to create such a scenario? Was the assassination attempt on the princess just a camouflage for their real target? This was the third inference. Moxie had delivered a warning but ended up dying while the princess who was the target of the assassination remained alive. This meant that although Moxie had delivered the warning for the princess, she did not send anyone to protect Moxie and had instead focused on protecting herself. Thus, Moxie had been easily killed. This was the fourth inference. The more Jun Zhantian thought about it, the colder his face became, and the sharper his eyes shone. Eventually, it had become a ferocious visage. Why is it that my grandson that went to deliver the warning ended up dying while that damned girl did not? I, Jun Zhantian, joined the army even before I could shave, fought through hundreds and thousands of battles. I massacred my way through millions of corpses to become a Grand Duke, contributing brilliant exploits for the kingdom, unparalleled within the kingdom. I, Jun Zhantian, had 3 sons and 3 grandsons. 2 sons died fighting for the country while the youngest one was crippled for life. Of my 3 grandsons, 2 left on a war campaign only to never return. Now, my only heir died for the sake of the princess. Is this how my family of valiant warriors would end? If such is the case, what else do I have to live for? Since it would come to an end either way, I might as well drag everyone who is trying to take down my Jun family with me. Jun Zhantian began to laugh, a bitter and sorrowful laughter, louder and louder, his face filled with tears. He suddenly sprang up violently, his eyes emitting sparks of lightning accompanied by a red shade of blood. Glancing coldly at the night outside the window, he turned and walked slowly to stand before the portrait of his late wife. He stood upright, gazing at it for a long while, his mouth moving as though he was about to say something but in the end chose not to. He extended his hand, stroking the air as though trying to feel something, as though he was trying to say goodbye for one last time. Grandpa June narrowed his eyes slightly, as though he was trying to forcibly hold something back. He abruptly turned away and lifted his sword that had been left on the walls for a long time. His white hair flowing in a desolate manner, he strode out without looking back. The moment he turned away, 2 drops of tears fell onto the ground, breaking into countless pieces. On the portrait hanging off the wall was the image of a benevolent and motherly-looking old woman. Her smile remained everlasting. But her eyes seemed to reveal a sense of sadness. A wind blew into the room through the window, causing the portrait to flip back once, showing how powerless it was. Chapter 70, Rising Thunder. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 070, Rising Thunder. The housekeeper, Old Pang, stretched out his hand and pulled a thin wire behind Jun Zhantian's chair. An ear-piercing bell sound suddenly resounded through the Jun residence's courtyard. After that, he followed Jun Zhantian silently, his face cold and decisive. He had already deduced what Jun Zhantian would do next, but he did not intend to stop him. Moreover, he had decided to accompany him. No complaints. No regrets. Downstairs, a wheelchair was resting quietly. Jun Wui was seated upright upon it, his pair of sword-like eyebrows exuded a murderous aura, which soared through the skies. His face remained expressionless as he watched his father walk down the stairs. Their eyes revealed the same determination as they turned around without speaking. At this point, there was no need to say anything. Tens of dark figures rushed over from all directions, standing quietly in rows of 3 in the courtyard. They calmly looked at Jun Jiantian. No matter what it was that Jun Jiantian planned to do, they would follow him. Until the very end. Within the shadows, countless others appeared like ghosts, assembling and awaiting their orders. All of Jun family's hidden forces have at this moment been deployed without reservation. Grandpa Jun stepped forward and said a few words in a low tone. The men within the shadows suddenly disappeared without a trace, just like blood being scattered across the skies. The whistling sound of the wind on the other hand seemed to have increased in intensity. Jun Jiantian stood silently for a moment and inhaled deeply, taking in the fresh night air. However, he felt as though the air he inhaled was filled with a thick stench of blood, causing his heart to suffocate. Turning, he got up on a horse, his face was cold as iron, his red cape fluttering about in darkness, seemingly infused with blood. The rest of them remained silent, each of them climbed up their horses and followed him. Jun Wui slapped his wheelchair with his hands and flew up into the air, landing on top of his horse. Flicking the reins, he urged his horse forward and followed them. Moments later, Jun Jiantian was seated upon the stage of the military grounds. Outside, the sound of 40 drums were slowly on the rise. As the drums boomed out, men constantly donned their military uniforms, armors and helmets. Picking up their weapons, they galloped towards the military grounds on their horses. Once they reached the military grounds, they dismounted and stood as straight as a spear. The number of men on the grounds increased, but none of them said a word. They all stared attentively at Jun Jiantian, who was seated upon the chair of the Grand Marshal. Their eyes exuded an unmatched blaze of fanaticism. Old Marshal. It has been too long. Too long since we have heard the pounding sound of this general's summoning drum. The raging fires of 100 battles. We have missed it. The sound of drums stopped. The many generals stood attentively on the military grounds. On both sides, dozens of banners flapped about in the wind, creating hula sounds, resembling that of the mournful weeping of 1,000 people. Jun Jiantian stood up, walked to the front side of the stage and asked as he gave everyone a sharp gaze. Is anyone absent here? Everyone has arrived. We are all awaiting Senior Marshal's orders. The hundreds of them chanted simultaneously. Very well. Tonight, this old man will move the land and shake the skies. Jun Jiantian's sharp eyes burst out with murderous intent. All captains, listen up. Here. Chen Zhounan. Here. You are to marshal your forces and hold the west gate. Without my orders, no one is allowed to leave the city. Once a riot is discovered, send out your troops to suppress it. Jun Jiantian placed a great emphasis on the words, no one. Affirmative. Jun Yanfen. Here. You are in charge of the east gate. Affirmative. Zhan Jitian. Here. North gate. Understood. Chan Linyu. Here. South gate. The rest of you will follow me. A series of commands were issued. Every one of them stepped forth to accept the token of command before turning and leave. Not a single one of them asked for a reason. All of them had served under Jun Jiantian before and made up the backbone of the Jun family's military power. They would obediently obey any orders from Jun Jiantian without question. Even if it meant their deaths. This was especially true for Chen Zhounan, Zhan Jitian, Chan Linyu, and Jun Yanfen. The 4 of them were Grandpa Jun's most competent great generals. They are also a group of wild, prideful iron-blooded war maniacs. The only one who could give orders to them is Jun Jiantian. Regardless of right or wrong, they would execute the commands to the end. These four form the backbone of the Jun family's military power. As the generals received their commands one after another, Jun Jiantian's eyes turned colder. "Moxie, just watch as Grandpa takes revenge for you. Tonight, those that were your enemies, those that are suspects, all of them must pay." As the sound of the drums was resounding within the palace, the emperor of Tianxiang Kingdom, Yang Huaiyu, woke up from his sleep with a start, and asked, "What is that sound?" His Majesty, the emperor, who is at the prime of his life and had once been plagued with many military problems, felt an inexplicable sense of crisis. It felt as though a sky-shattering event was occurring. Outside, a feminine voice replied. "Reporting to your Majesty," it seemed to be. "The sound of war drums. Sound of war drums." The emperor frowned, but suddenly became shocked. War drums. General's summoning drum. His face turned pale. He rolled out of bed and draped himself with only a cloak over his inner clothes before walking out of the room. He stopped and listened attentively, his face turning heavy. Jun Jiantian. With just a moment, the emperor was able to deduce that this was the sound of Jun Jiantian's war drums. Jun Jiantian's general's summoning drum was the only one within the city that could produce such a spectacular, yet tragic sound. It was also only Jun Jiantian's war drums that could produce such an imagery of power and influence, enough to shake the entirety of Tianxiang Kingdom. What happened today? What do I not know? The emperor's face turned sullen as he slowly asked. At the current, no matter what he chooses to do, he must maintain a state of tranquility and not become anxious. Only by first finding out what had transpired would he understand why Jun Jiantian would drum the general's summoning drum at this time. It was only after knowing all these would he be able to take the appropriate measures to resolve the problem. This one does not know. The 6 palace attendants went on their knees, none of them able to answer the question. "Go find out. Reporting to your Majesty, this one remembers that 1 long hour ago, Princess Ling Meng had requested an audience with your Majesty. I am uncertain the reason for her request." An eunuch stepped forward from behind the emperor and answered in a feminine manner. "Ling Meng. What happened to her? Ling Meng have always been well behaved. Unless something major had happened, she would not disturb me at such a late hour. Why didn't anyone report it to me? Who was so presumptuous to the point of interfering with my matters?" The emperor realized something out of place here. The eunuch remained silent, his eyes drifting towards the bedchambers. "Quickly summon Ling Meng over." "Yes. Concubine Meng. Get out here now." The emperor shouted out in fury. A beauty whose body was covered only in a layer of translucent cloth came out and knelt on the floor. "Answer me, why was Ling Meng looking for me? Why did you stop her?" The emperor's eyes were like ice, devoid of warmth. "The princess. She said that someone tried to assassinate her, but I saw that she was not hurt and was able to talk in her usual manner, so I believed that she was only being mischievous. In addition, your Majesty was already asleep. This concubine dared not disturb you," Concubine Meng answered as she trembled. "My daughter suffered from an assassination attempt and you stopped her from meeting her father, and you had the gall to say that she was being mischievous. He. You are quite the considerate concubine," His Majesty said in a gentle voice, seemingly undisturbed by everything that had occurred. But Concubine Meng, who was kneeling on the ground, started trembling all over. She knew that once His Majesty used such a kind of voice to speak, it meant that someone's head was about to roll. The emperor moved forward and gently whispered into her ear. "I know that someone like you would not have the guts to do something like this. However, whatever it is that your master had promised you, it would never be accomplished. I will also ensure that he fails to accomplish it." Concubine Meng was suddenly overwhelmed with fear and stared with wide-open eyes, her body slumping onto the floor. "Men, bring Concubine Meng away and have her sent into the cold palace. No one is allowed to come in contact with her." The emperor's face remained calm as he declared the fate of concubine Meng, who had once stood above thousands. Imperial Father. Princess Ling Meng rushed towards the emperor. Her hair was still in a bit of a mess. Do not be nervous, just tell me what had happened today. Come, talk to your father, make sure you tell me every detail. The emperor smiled kindly as he looked at his daughter, as though nothing had happened earlier. The chilling coldness within his eyes was already completely concealed.